Hi, I'm Pamela. My sister once slammed my face into the fridge so hard she broke my nose. I was 23. I was bleeding. I could barely breathe. And my mom? She didn't flinch. She laughed, called it just a bruise, told me I was being dramatic. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was realizing it wasn't a one-time moment. It was the pattern. The fake college letters, the stolen job portfolios, the scholarship that never reached my mailbox because someone in my house made sure it didn't. What happens when the people who raised you aren't just neglectful, but intentional? What if the bruises were just the surface, and the real damage was quieter, calculated, and legal? Would you still call it family, or would you start collecting receipts like I did? I didn't expect her to be home that early. The house had been quiet when I pulled into the driveway, the late afternoon light casting soft gold across the front lawn. As I stepped inside, I tossed my keys into the ceramic bowl by the door and moved toward the kitchen, hoping for a moment of silence, maybe a quick snack. Instead, I walked right into the tension that had been lying in wait. Elawan stood by the counter with her arms crossed, her lips pressed into that smug line she used when she was waiting to pounce. She didn't say anything at first, just stared at me like I'd spilled something on her. "You wore it!" she finally hissed, pointing to the hoodie I had on, hers. "I needed something warm," I said, pulling the sleeves over my hands. "It was just hanging in the closet." "You didn't ask. It's not like you even wear this one." Wrong answer. The air shifted, dense and tight. She kicked the drawer shut with her foot, the slam echoing too loudly in our small kitchen. "You've got a habit of touching things that don't belong to you, Pamela." I could feel the heat rising in my chest. "It's a sweatshirt, Elle. Don't make it into something it's not." "Oh, honey," she said with that venom-sweet tone of hers. "Everything you touch turns into something it's not." Then came the outburst. She didn't yell, didn't even raise her voice. She lunged, fast. Her fist connected with my face, right under my eye, and all I heard was a snap. Not loud, not cinematic, just sharp and final. My knees gave way. The taste of iron hit my tongue as my hand flew to my nose. I stumbled back, gripping the edge of the counter with one hand, trying to stay upright. Blood ran over my lips, thick and sudden. The room tilted. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I gasped. Elowen blinked once, cool, collected. "Don't touch my stuff next time." She walked past me like I was a shadow. No regret, no flinch. I don't know how long I stood there. Maybe a few seconds, maybe a lifetime. All I knew was my face was on fire, my hands shaking, and I had to get out of the kitchen. I staggered toward the living room, my hand pressed to my face, barely able to see. My breath came in bursts, more panic than pain now. "Mom!" I called out. Vera was reclined on the couch, popcorn bowl in hand, eyes locked on some crime show. She turned her head slowly, saw my face, and blinked. "You girls," she muttered with a sigh. "She hit me," I said, trying to sound firm, not desperate. "She broke my nose, Mom." She looked me up and down, then shook her head. "It's just a bruise. Stop acting like you're dying." I waited for her to move, to stand up, to get a towel or ask if I needed ice. Instead, she reached into her popcorn bowl, grabbed another handful, and focused back on the TV. "Are you serious?" Vera didn't even blink. "You've always been dramatic. You probably startled her." My nose throbbed. My body shook. But what broke me wasn't the punch. It was her laugh. Dry, small, unbothered. She laughed. That was the moment. The point where I stopped feeling like her daughter and started feeling like something disposable. I made it to the bathroom and closed the door behind me. The mirror didn't soften anything. My face was smeared red, swollen. My hoodie, now blood-speckled, clung to my skin. I rinsed my hands. Cold water, harsh against the cuts on my knuckles. My breath came shallow, but steady. I wasn't panicking anymore. I was remembering. The scraped knees I cried over that got dismissed. The birthday cards Elowen got that I didn't. the time I got grounded for losing my phone, only to find it in Eloin's purse a week later. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't new. It was just louder this time. I stared at the mirror and whispered the only quote I could think of. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. I reached for my phone. My fingers were still trembling, but I managed to open the camera. I didn't take the photo because I needed proof. I took it because this time, I refused to forget. Not the pain, not the blood, not the way she looked at me like it was my fault, and not the way my mother laughed. And just like that, I realized no one was coming. Not to check on me. Not to clean the blood. Not even to pretend they cared. I slid down to the cold bathroom floor, my back against the cabinet. My head leaned to the side, resting against the wall, the tile chilling through my hoodie. The pain had dulled to a steady throb, the kind that doesn't scream but settles deep, like a slow ache in the bones you forgot you had. I reached for some toilet paper, not even bothering with real gauze. That was under the sink, and opening the cabinet meant passing by the mirror again. I wasn't ready for that yet. The toilet paper stuck as I pressed it beneath my nose. It turned red almost instantly. Still, I sat there, not moving, not crying, just waiting. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Nothing, no footsteps, no knock. The only sound was Vera's TV echoing from the living room. I recognized the show. Reruns of something she'd watched 100 times. I could hear the crunch of popcorn. When you've been ignored long enough, even pain becomes your secret. I whispered it out loud, surprised by how it sounded. Like truth. Like history. I pulled out my phone again, thumbed through the contact list. Blank. No one I could call without it feeling like I was catching up after years of silence, with blood dripping down my shirt. Every name felt distant. Everyone I had once been close to had slowly been pushed out by the chaos of this house. Or maybe I'd done the pushing, just to keep the questions at bay. The toothbrush was gone. Mine. It wasn't even in the cup anymore. Just Eloin's pink-handled one and Mom's electric one. I stood up slowly, wincing at the soreness in my spine. The towel rack was empty, except for a fresh, unused white towel. The ones Vera kept for guests. My towel, the blue one with bleach stains, nowhere in sight. Even here, even in the one space where I should have felt like I belonged, I was being erased. Later, when the house had quieted even more, as if that were possible, I opened the door. The hallway smelled like something sugary, probably Eloin's latest body spray. Her door was open. She was in the kitchen, back to me, pouring orange juice into a glass. She turned just as I entered. "Wow," she said, eyes scanning my face with a half smirk. "You really bruise like a peach." She slid a glass of water toward me across the counter. "Here, you look like you could use it." I took it but didn't drink. Her eyes danced like she was watching something funny unfold on her phone. Vera didn't even look up from the couch. "Still sulking?" she asked, flipping channels. "It's over." She didn't mean it. Let it go. Let it go. Like it was gum on the bottom of a shoe. Like it wasn't still pulsing through my face. I looked at Eloin. "You really think this is okay?" She shrugged. "You're always making a scene. It was just a reflex. Maybe next time don't touch my stuff." They never gave me comfort, just objects. A glass of water in place of a hug. A look instead of care. I went back to the bathroom, closed the door, locked it. This time I stared in the mirror longer. The bruises were starting to deepen, purples bleeding into blue. My eyes looked like someone else's. Someone exhausted but newly awake. I lifted the phone again. This time, I filmed a short clip. My face, my voice describing what happened. The laugh track from the living room, barely audible behind me. Then I took pictures of the hallway, the empty towel rack, the toothbrush cup. Not because I needed to prove anything, because I was reclaiming it. Every inch of space they'd taken, every word they'd twisted, every silence they'd counted on. Next time she hit me, it wouldn't disappear in silence. The next morning came quietly. Light rain tapped against my bedroom window. the kind of soft drizzle that almost convinced you things could be clean again. But as I sat up in bed, my face throbbed like it had its own pulse. The swelling had set in overnight, dull and angry across my cheekbone, and I could feel the stiffness in my jaw when I tried to yawn. I didn't bother with breakfast. The kitchen was likely still hostile territory, and I had no desire to navigate the sarcastic glares or fake concern that passed for communication in our household. Instead, I went straight to my closet and pulled out the old plastic box I kept tucked under the pile of unused art supplies. It was one of those containers people usually use for storing holiday ornaments or school papers. Mine was filled with paperwork, birth certificates, old report cards, copies of leases, even the letter from the community college that once said I wasn't selected. I never threw it away. As I flipped through the stack, a small manila envelope slid out. No label. Inside, folded in quarters, were 2 birth certificates. One looked old, yellowed around the edges. The other, newer, reprinted on crisp white. At first glance, they matched. My name, my mother's, the hospital, but the birth year was off by a year. My jaw tightened. I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app, typing side by side the dates listed. One showed I was born in 1988. The other said 1989. A scanned correction notice stapled to the back explained that the amendment had been made to ensure consistency for sibling enrollment and application benefits. Sibling enrollment. College benefits. I remembered Vera telling me, back when I didn't get into a scholarship program for firstborn students, that it wasn't a big deal, that Eloin needed it more. Back then, I thought I hadn't tried hard enough, that maybe I didn't deserve it. I whispered now, voice low but even, "You rewrote my story, for her." My hands shook slightly as I added photos of the certificates to the folder I'd started the night before. I named this one Forgery by Family. Walking back down the hallway, I passed the picture frames that lined the wall outside the living room. Vera had a thing for gallery walls, a mosaic of posed smiles, beach trips, holiday dinners. One photo stopped me. It was from our family trip to Santa Cruz. Eloin and Vera were in the center, holding smoothies and grinning at the camera. My dad, who had since left and become a ghost in all but tax documents, stood to the side, hand on Vera's shoulder. I remembered that day. I wore a blue windbreaker. I was the one who drove everyone that morning, but I wasn't in the photo. I stepped closer, squinting. There was a sliver of blue at the very edge of the picture. Cropped. No, cropped out. I pulled out my USB backup from the drawer and plugged it into my laptop in the dining room. I had synced most family photos there years ago, before I gave up trying to organize anything sentimental. I found the original. There I was, smiling faintly, windbreaker zipped up, standing just behind Eloin, who had pulled the camera into selfie mode. The version on the wall had been edited. My body, removed, replaced by a patch of blurred boardwalk. They don't rewrite the past, I said under my breath. They delete it, frame by frame. I took a photo of the printed version, then the original from the drive, side by side. Another entry in the archive. Back in my room, I renamed my laptop folder. Proof I exist. I added the altered image, the birth certificates, and time-stamped each file. Not because I needed reassurance, but because if I ever decided to show someone, I wanted them to see not just what happened, but the pattern of it. No drama, no exaggeration, just facts. I didn't cry. I just saved everything. Before closing the screen, I walked to the hallway one last time and looked at that Santa Cruz photo. It hung in the center of the wall, as if it represented everything we were as a family. I stared at the spot where I had been and whispered, "You erased me from the wall, but I'm still in the house." I didn't sleep much the night after discovering the photo. I kept waking up, heart pounding like I'd left the stove on or forgotten something vital. But it wasn't anxiety, not really. It was clarity, the kind that doesn't come from peace, but from finally seeing how deep the rot goes. 2 days later, I had the house to myself. Vera had left a post-it on the fridge. Out with Elowen. Spa day. Leftover chicken in the oven if you want it. The gall of that note almost made me laugh. A spa day. Bought with whose name, I wondered? I had a call scheduled with a specialist for my nose. Nothing cosmetic, just making sure there wasn't lasting damage. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open and the speakerphone on. Miss, last name. I'm afraid we're unable to move forward with your insurance-based plan. Your application was declined due to a low credit score. I blinked. I haven't defaulted on anything. The representative's voice was gentle but distant, reading from a script. According to our data, you have an open line of credit in your name that's been delinquent for 17 months. 17. I was 26 when Elowen went on that cruise. The one she bragged about, all expenses paid. I thanked the rep and ended the call. My fingers hovered over the keyboard before I typed into my banking portal. It took a few clicks, but there it was. A credit line under my name. Not mine. Not requested. Opened on behalf of Pamela by a guardian. The contact listed? Vera's old cell. Charges were all there. Vacation deposits, cosmetic purchases, online orders, several of which were shipped to Elowen's email address. I scrolled, my chest growing tighter with every line. They didn't just steal my name. They built an entire lifestyle on it. I pulled out my phone and hit record. You used my name like a discount code, but I'm the one paying. I didn't send it right away. I saved it, backed it up, then forwarded every document I downloaded to my encrypted backup email. I wasn't done. Later that afternoon, I logged into my freelance dashboard to follow up on a project. A pop-up greeted me. Your account access is currently suspended. Please check your email for details. My stomach dropped. I switched tabs. Subject: Client Privacy Violation. The email accused me of accessing restricted client files outside of approved hours, breaching confidentiality policies. I hadn't touched those files in weeks. A chill moved through me. There was only one person who had both access to my home computer and a history of manipulating online systems. I called Jacob, an old friend from college who now worked in IT security. I gave him remote access, told him everything. He whistled low. They were sloppy, he said. This sub-account? It's not yours, but it mimics your profile structure. Whoever set it up used the same profile photo and even mimicked your email style. But here's the thing. The IP logs show it was accessed from inside your home. He paused. And look at this timestamp. The day your mom and Elowen were at church. You said Elowen was home, right? I nodded slowly. Jacob sent me a link to a log file. It showed activity on my machine. Screen captures, mouse movements, folder navigation. You use a laptop with a built-in cam? He asked. Yes. Why? I can run a local trace. If the camera was active during that session, we might have footage. He did. We did. The grainy video showed someone at my desk. Slender frame, long hair, wearing the hoodie Elowen had left in the laundry 2 days before. She scrolled through my folders, plugged in a flash drive, then left. I stared at the footage, jaw clenched. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't childish payback. This was calculated. I felt something shift in me then, something cold, calm, focused. I started a new set of folders. Truth A, Det B. Uploaded every file. Emailed the full archive to myself, labeled clearly. Finally, I tucked my laptop into the safe box under my bed. The only thing I said out loud that night, to no one in particular, was this. You want war, Elowen? Good, because I've already started my file. The following evening, I stayed behind my locked door, the soft buzz of the humidifier, the only sound breaking the stillness of my room. From the other side of the house, I could hear laughter, Elowen's sharp, rehearsed cackle, Vera's occasional chuckle, and the distinct pop of wine glasses clinking together. They were celebrating something, though I didn't care to ask what. But curiosity got the better of me. I crept out quietly, barefoot on the carpeted hallway, moving slow and deliberate. Elowen stood in front of the living room mirror, posing with her phone. She tilted her chin, smiled just enough to seem effortless, then snapped a picture. Her hair was swept to one side, her makeup deliberate, but not overdone. What stopped me wasn't the pose or the smug glow on her face. It was what shimmered around her neck. The necklace, a thin gold chain with a modest heart-shaped pendant. My necklace. The one Grandma had left to me in her will. I knew because it had a tiny engraving on the back. To P, for always seeing the truth. Vera entered the room, still in her robe, holding a half-eaten apple. She caught me staring. "Oh," she said, "we gave it to Elle. She'll wear it more. Don't make it weird. Don't make it weird." I didn't respond, just clenched my jaw and walked away before I could say something that would be dismissed as overreacting. Back in my room, I opened the bottom drawer of my nightstand. Inside was the letter, the one Grandma had handwritten, placed alongside her will. To Pamela, you have always been the one to see people as they truly are. This is for you. Wear it when you forget who you are, or when they try to make you someone else. I didn't need to wear the necklace to remember. I needed to remember they were trying to make me forget. Later that night, I sat at my desk scrolling through a university blog a friend had shared earlier. National Essay Finalists announced, flashed in bold at the top of the page. The second entry caught my eye. Through the Eyes of the Forgotten, by Elowen. Last name. The title was familiar. Too familiar. I clicked the link. The words hit like a slap. I was the shadow in my own home, learning to breathe without being seen. My chest tightened. That wasn't her voice. That was mine. That was my writing, ripped straight from a journal I kept in high school. A private, blood-soaked collection of lines I had once thought would never be read. I opened the folder on my laptop labeled Journal Scans. The entry dated October 14th, senior year. Line for line, paragraph by paragraph, Elowen had copied it, word for word. She hadn't just taken my necklace. She had taken my grief and dressed it in her handwriting. The comments on the article were glowing. So raw. So honest. This made me cry. She was being celebrated for surviving my story. I printed the article, highlighted the stolen lines. Then, I printed the original journal entry, date-stamped. My handwriting. This wasn't just betrayal. This was erasure. I opened my archive folder, created 2 new subfolders, Legacy Stolen, Voice Reclaimed. I added the article, my journal scans, and screenshots of the blog post. Then I opened a new email draft. To the scholarship committee. The subject line, copyright violation and academic misrepresentation. Finalist Elowen, last name. I didn't send it. Not yet. Instead, I took a sticky note, wrote 7 words, and stuck it to my mirror. If they rewrite me again, the footnotes will scream. By the time the sun crept in through the slats of the blinds, the kitchen had taken on that late morning hush only houses filled with secrets seemed to carry. Elowen and Vera were gone. I hadn't asked where, didn't need to. Wherever they went, it likely involved someone else's credit card and some performance of success they hadn't earned. The wine glasses were still in the sink. So was a lipstick-stained coffee mug with Vera's signature Glam Mom logo. I walked past it. I wasn't looking for confrontation this morning. I was looking for answers. In the hallway, I crouched down by the filing cabinet. Vera's makeshift home office was mostly bills and junk coupons, but I remembered a folder she'd once labeled Insurance Not Urgent. Something about the word not felt like an invitation. The envelope was yellowed at the corners, edges soft like it had been handled too often, but never opened. I took a letter opener to the seal. Inside were 2 documents, folded neatly, too neatly. One was a copy of my grandfather's will. The other was a deed. My name, printed clearly, officially, permanently, as the owner of the house we were living in. The transfer had taken place when I turned 18. I'd been told it was symbolic, a future fallback. Vera had said. A technicality, something to be handled later. Apparently, later had come and gone without me. Tucked behind the will was another paper, a loan document. The borrower, Pamela, last name. The collateral, the house. Purpose, renovation and living expenses. Co-signed, forged. I scanned the fine print. The date, just months before Elowen's so-called internship in New York. The one Vera insisted we all pitch in for because it was an opportunity of a lifetime. It had been. For Elowen, funded by my name, my credit, my house. They didn't just live in my house, I whispered. They mortgaged my name and dared to call it motherhood. I didn't rage. I scanned everything, uploaded it to my encrypted folders, another line of defense. Afterward, I walked to the small pantry we rarely used. It had become a cluttered closet over the years, half cleaning supplies, half catch-all for mail and things Vera never threw out. I began to dig. Behind a stack of old phone books, I found a pile of unopened envelopes. Some dated 5 years back. Among them was one with my name, neatly typed. A college crest in the upper left corner. Postmarked, sealed. I opened it carefully. Inside. Dear Pamela, congratulations. You've been awarded the full merit-based scholarship for the 2020 academic year. Your work in digital design and community leadership reflects the values we are proud to support. The letter was dated 4 weeks before Vera told me the flood ruined the mail. I sat down on the floor and held the envelope in my lap. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just memorized the language. Each compliment, each word of validation, not for approval, but because someone out there, someone unrelated to me, had once seen my worth, and someone in this house had hidden it. I scanned the letter, saved it, added it to a new folder titled What They Hid, and then I printed a hard copy. At the kitchen table, I opened a new document. Legal precedents, breach of guardianship. I began listing the violations, state-by-state statutes, case examples. I wasn't looking for revenge anymore. I was writing a blueprint. They stole my mailbox. Now I was stealing everything back. By Sunday evening, I had cleared a new section on my wall, not for art, but for evidence. Printed screenshots, legal articles, time-stamped records, and cross-referenced file names all neatly tacked beside each other. The wall had once held my sketches, color palettes, little bursts of inspiration. Now it held the things I never wanted to create, but couldn't afford to ignore. Outside my room, the mood was different. The front door creaked open, then slammed. Vera's voice trailed in from the living room. "Our girl's going places," she said, giddy. "They said she's the next big creative director." I didn't move. I didn't need to. I opened my laptop, navigated to the design agency's careers page, then clicked on the Meet the Finalists link from the campaign design competition. There she was. Elowen, mid-speech, glowing in a blazer I recognized but had never worn. The image beside her bio showcased her portfolio. My heart didn't race. I didn't feel rage, just clarity. Every design, the logo for the dog food brand, the mood board for the Eco Beauty line, the copy tagline for the winter ad series, they were mine. Each one, originally built in my Illustrator folder, uploaded to our shared family Dropbox 3 months ago. She had cropped the watermarks, changed the file names, and added her own color tweaks. But the metadata still pointed to me. I called Taylor, a former client of mine from a pet startup. "Hey, random question," I began, keeping my tone light. "Do you still have that original file I sent you for your launch last spring?" "Of course," he said. "You're still credited on our website." I thanked him, hung up, and compared it to the image Elowen had uploaded as her own. Identical, down to the slant of the font she claimed to have chosen. She built a career out of things I designed when she was still sleeping till noon. I added it all to a new folder. Client misrepresentation. A little while later, I passed the laundry room on my way to the kitchen. I stopped. A pair of white flats sat by the dryer, scuffed on the sides, faint stains near the toe. I leaned down. The right shoe's insole had a rusty-colored mark along the heel edge. Blood. Mine. Those were my shoes. The ones I wore the night Aloan broke my nose. I had thrown them in the laundry basket days later, unable to look at them without flinching. Vera must have cleaned them and handed them off like a donation, from victim to victor. Aloan had worn them in the photo shoot. They appeared in 2 of the press photos on the agency's site. I took a picture. Not for drama. For the record. They'll praise her style, but not ask what it took to look that polished. Back in my room, I organized the files. Folder by folder, screenshots of my original work, her edited versions, and the social media comments crediting her as a fresh creative voice. She hadn't just borrowed my name. She built her brand with my pain. I opened a draft email to the HR department of the design agency, typed the subject line, "Formal complaint, misuse of intellectual property by applicant Elowen." Last name. I didn't click send. Not yet. Instead, I sat back, read through everything once more, then renamed the folder, Glamour Built on Bruises. The next few days moved like clouds before a storm, slow, humid, and full of pressure. Vera floated through the house as if nothing was brewing. Elowen stayed on the phone, speaking in polished tones to people I couldn't see, but knew weren't her friends. They were leads, contacts, image builders. And then Friday arrived. I found the invite stuck to the fridge with a novelty magnet shaped like a margarita glass. Celebration dinner, Friday, 6 p.m., honoring Elowen's career milestone. Below that, Vera had scribbled in pen, "You live here, you'll sit at the table." Fine. At 5:58 p.m., I walked into the dining room and took the seat furthest from the TV. The air smelled like microwaved salmon and artificial vanilla. The table was decked out like we were hosting a gala. Paper napkins folded into triangles, dollar store candles lit and flickering dramatically. The doorbell rang every few minutes. Extended family arrived in pastel cardigans and stiff hairdos. A couple of old neighbors, too, all grinning wide, clapping Elowen on the back, saying, "We knew you were destined for big things." She soaked it in. Hair curled, lipstick sharp. Dressed in a soft ivory blazer and heels I'm sure she borrowed from my closet years ago and never returned. I kept my phone in my lap, screen dimmed. My files were uploaded. I had made copies and backups. They were sipping from cheap wine glasses, passing plates of dry lasagna, when my email buzzed. Subject: Submission Confirmation. HR Compliance Division. Your evidence package has been submitted and received. Further review underway. I turned off the vibration and stared across the room. Elowen stood, tapping her glass with a fork. "Thank you, everyone," she began, with that sing-song cadence she used when she wanted to sound humble. "This opportunity means the world to me. I wouldn't be here without your belief in my vision." Vision. I reached beneath the table and tapped a small remote. The living room TV turned on. The slideshow began. The first slide read, "Identity theft, financial fraud, physical assault, all in one family." Gasps. Utensils clinked to a stop. The next slide showed side-by-side design comparisons, mine and hers, complete with timestamps and metadata. Then the photo of the white flats, zoomed in on the stain inside the heel. Labeled, "Evidence, June 12th. Incident." Audio followed. A clip of Vera's voice. "She's always overreacting. Elowen didn't mean it." Then Alowen's laughing. "She looks like a raccoon. I barely touched her." The room was dead silent, except for the voiceover I had recorded, explaining each exhibit. Elowen stood frozen, eyes wide. "Turn it off!" she yelled, stepping forward. I stood up slowly. "You should have turned yourself in first," Vera shouted from the corner, her face blotchy. "She's lying! She's making this up!" I turned to the crowd. It's not a story, it's a file, and it's already been sent to the agency, the bank, and the school board. One aunt blinked rapidly and muttered, "I always knew something was off." Elowen slammed her glass down. It cracked. Vera grabbed her arm. Optics! Control the optics! I walked toward the hallway, past the frames that once held my edited-out memories. Past the front door I was never welcomed through as a guest. I stepped outside into the cooling evening. My phone buzzed again. "Your report has been verified. Investigation opened." I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just whispered, "You spent years silencing me in this house, but tonight it's my voice playing in every corner." By the time the sun stretched across the hardwood floors, I had already been awake for hours. The kitchen smelled like burnt coffee from a half-washed pot I'd run through the machine. I didn't care. I let it sit, black and bitter, the way mornings like this called for. Vera's bedroom door remained shut. Her silence was a new flavor. No passive-aggressive sighs, no sudden slams of drawers, just nothing. It wasn't guilt, it was fear. I checked my inbox again. There it was. Subject, verified. Submission, received, and under review. I stared at the subject line for a moment, then closed the tab. I didn't need the details. I knew what came next. At 9:12 a.m., the knock came. Not forceful, not friendly, just firm. Two men stood on the porch in navy windbreakers. One held a clipboard, the other a leather folder. The taller one spoke. "We're here on behalf of the county clerk's office. Is Elowen, last name, available?" I pointed to the empty chair in the dining room behind me. The one where she'd toasted herself the night before, wine glass in hand. "She's not here." He nodded. "We'll leave documentation in her name, but you'll need to acknowledge receipt as the legal occupant." The envelope was thick. When I signed for it, I glanced at the label. Notice of property seizure. Issued by Financial Enforcement Division, the document made everything official. The house, legally mine since I was 18, had been used without my consent as loan collateral. The court had frozen Vera's access to all assets tied to the property. The agents followed me inside. On the kitchen table sat the remains of the birthday cake Elowen had insisted on cutting after her big announcement last night. The pink icing had begun to crust. One candle still leaned sideways. The officer set the envelope right in the center of the cake. I didn't move it. A moment later, Vera appeared at the top of the stairs, robe clutched tightly, eyes puffy. "What? Oh, what's happening?" I didn't answer. I just watched as she reached the kitchen, picked up the envelope, read the first few lines, and stopped breathing for a second. "You wouldn't," she said, voice cracking. "Pamela, this is your family's house." I stepped closer, calm and firm. "No. It's always been mine. You just borrowed it." She looked like she might speak again, but nothing came out. I left her standing there, envelope in hand, next to a cake that no one would eat. Later that afternoon, I opened my email and saw another message, forwarded from the HR team at the design agency. "Dear Pamela, thank you for your detailed documentation. The investigation into applicant Elowen, last name, has concluded. Due to confirmed violations and identity conflicts, the applicant has been removed from all current consideration and blacklisted from future candidacy." Attached was a secondary email, confirmation that her work had been reviewed and that my original signatures on the design files had been revoked. It was surgical, quiet, final. Without those files, Elowen's application collapsed. No portfolio, no credits, no recommendation, and all I had done was unsign. Vera came into the living room around 6 p.m., holding a cup of tea she clearly didn't want. She hovered near the mantel, where I had laid a copy of the house deed, framed and printed with a highlighted line. Sole title holder, Pamela, last name. "Do you think maybe," she began, voice tentative, "we can let this blow over?" I didn't look up from the book I wasn't really reading. "Nothing's blowing over," I said, "but something's finally ending." She stood there a few seconds longer, then shuffled away. The air felt different now. Not lighter, not yet, but less suffocating. At 8:23 p.m., just as the water in the kettle started to whistle, I heard a car door slam, then screaming, muffled, frantic. Alawan had come home. I turned off the stove and poured myself a cup. I let her scream. Rain arrived the day after Alawan's screams settled into silence. It hadn't stormed. Not the kind with thunder or warning. Just that quiet, persistent kind that taps on windows and makes you listen. The kind that makes you stop pretending the house is still intact. I spent most of that morning pacing between the kitchen and the living room, every creak of the floorboard sounding sharper now. Vera kept to herself. She no longer barked orders or defended bad behavior. She didn't even attempt guilt. Her energy was something closer to retreat. By mid-afternoon, a package arrived, hand-delivered, no return address, though I recognized the handwriting instantly. It was Vera's. Slanted, too perfect cursive that tried too hard to be elegant. On the top corner of the box, she'd scribbled, "Nana's Things." I opened it slowly on the living room floor. Inside, faded scarves, a cracked photo frame, and a sealed envelope with my name written across the front in my grandmother's unmistakable script. The envelope was worn, but unopened. She'd written the kind of way that made it feel like each letter mattered. Below my name, one line. For Pamela. In case they forget you, so you don't. I sat down, legs folded, and opened it carefully. The paper inside smelled faintly of the cedar drawer she used to keep it in. I unfolded it with both hands, like it was a blueprint for something I hadn't known I'd been missing. She'd written about watching me as a child, about how I played alone without complaint, how I defended Elowen even when she blamed me for things I hadn't done, about how Vera had always praised the loudest voice in the room, but never stopped to listen for the one that didn't need to shout. "You were never invisible," it read. "They just didn't know how to see someone who doesn't beg to be noticed." She ended the letter with this: "That house is yours, not because of legality, but because you're the one who kept it standing." My throat tightened, but I didn't cry. I placed the letter beside me, then stood and walked to my home office, the space I'd claimed from what used to be a storage room. The walls still bore faint marks from Vera's old calendar tacks and yellowed tape. I had made it mine now, frame by frame. I opened my laptop and searched the university press site again, scrolling through archived media kits from Elowen's last awards event. In one presentation file, I noticed something odd. A slide that used to carry my name as part of a team design now said, "Concept inspired by family collaboration." No credits, no initials, just family. I downloaded the file and overlaid it on the one I'd submitted years before. Every detail, the color gradients, the header spacing, the icon placements, matched. Pixel for pixel. They hadn't just stolen it. They blurred my name out, kept the story, and deleted the author. I printed the slide and pinned it beside Grandma's letter on the wall of my office. A wall that was no longer covered in other people's ambitions. Just mine, reclaimed. Then I did something I never thought I'd circle back to. I logged into the university portal, the same school that had once offered me a scholarship they never let me see, and opened the application page for the Fall 2025 MFA program. My fingers moved with clarity as I typed out the personal statement. I didn't mention them by name. I didn't need to. I wrote about resilience, about design as storytelling, about how silence is not absence. At the bottom of the form, it asked for a file name. I uploaded my portfolio and titled it simply Pamela Rewrites.pdf. Then I clicked send. This time, my name wouldn't be missing. A week passed like molasses on a cold plate. Slow, thick, quiet. The kind of week where everything settled in layers. Alawan barely made eye contact. Vera only spoke when absolutely necessary. I didn't mind. Some silences are golden, others are earned. I moved my supplies into what used to be Alawan's bedroom. It felt different walking into that space as its new owner. The air held no resistance this time, no scent of her expensive candles or body sprays. I opened the blinds wide, letting in light she used to keep out. Then I began painting. Not the walls. I did that 2 days earlier, soft sage green to calm the echoes. I painted on canvas. Large strokes. Colors with names like fury, grit, and still breathing. While moving her dresser, I found a shoebox wedged behind the frame. The label read Old Cards. Curious, I pulled it out, wiped off the dust, and sat on the floor to open it. There were faded birthday cards, receipts for nail salons I never visited, and in the middle, a letter addressed to Elowen, but clearly from Brandon. My stomach tensed. I unfolded it. His words were neat, tentative. He apologized for the way things ended, for ghosting me, for not showing up the night he was supposed to meet my parents. He said Elowen had pulled him aside and told him I was unstable. Too emotional, too dramatic. She said I'd likely sabotage the relationship anyway, so he might as well do it on his terms. Vera, he wrote, confirmed it, saying, Pamela always misreads affection. She clings. I sat there for a long time, rereading the letter like it was a police report. Not because I still cared about Brandon, but because it proved something I hadn't been able to put into words. Elowen didn't win him. She dismantled the bridge before I even crossed it. The irony? She didn't keep him either. He ghosted her a few months later, according to old text threads. I remembered a night she'd cried in the bathroom for 2 hours and blamed a toxic man. Now I wondered if he'd finally seen the real her. I thought of the night I sat on the porch in a blue dress, waiting for Brandon to show up. I had lit citronella candles, put on mascara. Vera had peeked out and said, Honey, don't wait too long. Boys like him never show. They made sure of that. I didn't cry. I stood up, tossed the letter in a pile of things for donation, and deleted Brandon's number from my phone. Then I stretched a fresh canvas on the easel and titled the new series, Things That Were Taken. The first thing I painted wasn't a person. It wasn't even a memory. It was a door. Closed. Firm. Painted in reds and browns, and something too heavy to name. Later that evening, Vera knocked lightly on the door. I thought maybe we could talk, she said, voice quieter than usual. I didn't look up from the canvas. This room is mine now, I replied, and so is my silence. She didn't argue. The door stayed shut. When I finished for the night, I turned the canvas toward the window. From the outside, it would show 3 blurred figures walking away from a girl seated beneath a crooked tree. The girl wasn't crying. She was smiling. 2 months later, the house was quiet in a way it had never been. No footsteps stomping down the hallway, no perfume thick in the vents. The walls no longer held tension. They simply existed. Elowen was gone. Vera had left a few weeks after her, quietly, with no suitcase and only a note taped to the microwave. I didn't know how to love 2 daughters, it said in cursive, smudged like it had been written through hesitation. I read it once, then recycled it without a word. Since then, the room stayed clean. The floors didn't creak with judgment. I played music while I painted, something I never dared to do before, afraid someone would say it was too much or distracting. Now I let Nina Simone fill the studio without apology. That morning, I was sorting through the final drawer in Vera's old desk, mostly expired coupons and insurance offers, when I found it. A printed draft of a reference letter addressed to the senior editor of a major publishing house. It was signed by Professor M. Carmichael. That name lit up a memory. He'd taught an advanced writing seminar I took back in undergrad, the same semester Elowen failed creative writing for plagiarism. She'd never forgiven the professor for that grade, but she apparently didn't mind using his name. I checked the date, 1 year after his retirement. I called the university's registrar. They confirmed what I already knew. No, Professor Carmichael hasn't issued any letters of recommendation since leaving, and yes, that signature is digitally inconsistent with prior samples. I didn't flinch. I just hung up and leaned back in the chair. She hadn't only faked credentials, she'd used my old university login to access the template archive, then filled in the blanks. Her name, my access. She didn't just lie to employers, I said aloud. She lied with my history. It wasn't rage I felt, just finality. I logged into her now-defunct portfolio site. Blank. Her LinkedIn page? Removed. The email we once shared for Dropbox access? Deleted. Every trace of her public persona had crumbled under scrutiny. She hadn't disappeared in grace. She'd evaporated in disgrace. When your name becomes synonymous with fraud, I wrote in my journal that night, silence isn't dignity, it's exile. I wasn't curious where she'd gone. Cities swallow people like her easily. There's always another rooftop bar, another lie to sell. Vera left behind only one photo of us, tucked into a cabinet, a picture of me as a child standing next to a birthday cake, Ilawan grinning in the background with frosting on her nose. It was the only picture where I looked straight into the lens. I didn't frame it. I placed it in a box labeled before, and then I prepared for after. I wore Grandma's necklace the morning of my graduation, not for symbolism, but because it reminded me of someone who saw me without needing a spotlight to do it. No one clapped too loudly when I crossed the stage. I didn't invite anyone from my past, not even acquaintances, no fake support, no half-hearted congratulations. But I didn't walk alone. I walked with every moment I'd been told I was too quiet, too emotional, too much of a question mark. I walked with the memory of being cropped out of pictures, erased from resumes, replaced on birthdays, silenced at every table. And I crossed that stage with my name called clearly, attached to my own work, stitched into my own story. Some stories aren't for applause. They're for truth. And I'm the only one who earned the pen.